we move on to the inaugural session post the keynote address titled The Dynamics of Global Payments Towards Anytime, Anywhere Contactless Payments. I'd first like to welcome and introduce the members of the panel. Jimmy Ng, Group CIO and Head of Group Technology and Operations, DBS Bank, Singapore. Judy Bay, Global Head of Payments and Receivables, Standard Chartered Bank, Singapore. Surachai, Chatchalermpun, CISO, Krung Thai Bank, Thailand. And this panel will be moderated by Akhilesh, Tuteja, Global Cybersecurity Practice Co-Leader, Head Risk Consulting and Partner, KPMG in India. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ivan. This is an exciting morning here in India, and I'm delighted to be with some of my panelists who come from across the world. Most of the time when we talk about the new stuff, we in India tend to look west. But when it comes to technology, innovation, doing more with less, we got to go and look east. I'm delighted to have some of the best luminaries with me today. And Ivan, as you introduced, we've got people from DBS, we've got people from Standard Chartered Bank, and Surachai from Thailand. I couldn't have asked for more, and I'm really excited for the next 30 minutes when we talk about some of these nuances of how digital payment is going to transform and grow the economy. Before I get on to an interesting panel discussion, I just got reminded that when people have to use something, they all like to use fresh. I haven't come across anybody who would like to use a used toothbrush. Nobody likes to use anything that somebody else has used. Sometimes we are okay to buy used cars. Sometimes we are okay to buy maybe a used phone, but that's where it stops. But one thing which we don't mind using every single time, even though it may have been used by hundreds, thousands, and maybe millions of people before, that's cash. We love to use cash because it's valuable and its value does not diminish when somebody else has used it. But the problem in today's world is that it doesn't have any value reduction phenomena, but it got a huge health issue. Because when you deal with cash, you're also increasing the risk of you contacting a virus, which you want to stay away. So here comes the digital cash, our savior for us to get into the new world of how do we not only make the digital cash much more efficient, easy, and other very good reasons, but how do we also stay healthy? So if you want to stay healthy, to deal with less physical cash, because I'm sure the digital cash, digital payment, and doing instant payment will solve a lot of your problems. I actually have a very interesting role today because I have to come here and bring in some of these interesting perspectives from the folks you got here on the call. But my job is very easy. I only need to ask questions and I don't need to prepare with all the kind of answers. But I'm happy that the people who you got here today actually know all the answers. I've had the privilege of talking to some of them, and I think that they can really talk about some of these details which you're all interested in. So without losing much time, I would like to start with one simple rapid fire question. And that's a question to all my panelists. If you were to describe what is the one word which comes to your mind, the first word which comes to your mind when you hear digital payment, what that one word is. So let me start with Judy. Judy, what's the one word which comes to your mind when you hear digital payment?
Fast.
Fast, love it. Jimmy?
Convenient.
Convenient, love it. Surachai?
Security.
Security. I think your job is intact. I know you run the chief security officer job for the bank. So your ideas are rightly placed. She's very happy to see that you're always focused on what your job is. Thank you, Surachai. I also come from the world of cybersecurity. So I think we're hearing fast, convenient, and making it secure. But one thing which I think is a very interesting nuance, and I think I would invite Judy here to start with, to say that how does digital payment really help us do all that which you're talking about, to bring in security, make it fast, make it convenient, etc. But also it helps us grow the economy as a whole. So Judy, why don't you come in here saying, why do you think and how do you think the digital cash really helps us grow the economy?
Yeah, sure. I can jump in. I mean, digital payments is the future. As we talk about digital payments, it's no longer a standalone separate product. To me, digital payment is embedded in payments in today's world. Now, if you look at the digitization journey, it has been going on for many years. You know, the drivers has been reducing cost, improving efficiencies, sort of reducing risk. So those are the things driving it for the past many years. Now, with the pandemic, all of a sudden, clients are raising hand for it. And now online channel become a necessity. You know, people are screaming and crying for digital payments, and they couldn't wait to get rid of cash and check and switch digital payments. Now, if you're thinking about how digital payments can support the community and the corporates, individuals to grow and expand their business world, it's very simple. If you think about a few years ago, when we speak to our institutional clients, who do we speak to? We used to speak to AP head, payments head, collections head, operations head, yeah, treasury head. Now, who do we speak to? Chief marketing officer, business development head, you know, a growth officer, whoever is in the front and center of the business growth. That's who we're speaking to. And why? Because payments collections has been a huge pinpoint for the clients to grow their business, right? Because people, their customers are struggling with which payment to pay, you know, do I have this method or not? They see a huge drop rate. Think about Uber and Netflix as they expand to other countries where cars is not a dominant factor. How can they collect from their customers? That's a big pinpoint. Whoever can crack the code gonna win the market share, right? How Uber can pay the drivers, make them stand out from the other competitors. So payments collections has become a core competency for corporates to win business wallets, right? So let me stop here. Let me turn over to my colleagues. Maybe they have something else to add.
Yeah, I love the comment that you made, Judy. And before I kind of invite others, I just want to take one big takeaway for me. And I'm sure you talked about many things about how this whole pandemic has changed. But the fact that if I can have an Uber sooner than what she or he would have received in the traditional method, she or he can actually go extra mile. If a particular business tends to receive cash as soon as the bank has disbursed, if we reduce the cycle time from the payment getting stuck and somewhere the money is being unutilized. So what you're kind of telling me is that, you know, in today's digital world, you are making money go as far as it can every single minute. Like the airline industry has always said that keep your planes in the sky and you'll make money. So if your money is in the right hands, and which is what the digital payments can do, I think that could really grow the economy. So thank you, Judy, for that comment. Let me invite Jimmy. Jimmy actually is somebody who I really enjoyed having conversation before we started the this panel, and he's got a very diverse experience in many areas. So Jimmy, I really want you to give us some insight on, we've seen the cost and convenient, and domestically it's generally been a really evolved market, but we still are having certain challenges when it comes to trans-border payment, when you have to transmit money from one country to another. How do you see, where do we stand right now, and what do you think we could do to make that better?
Oh, let me put it, I mean, before I comment on that, I think payments and flow of funds is going to be the hygiene factor for economic growth, and no pun intended. You know, even for this post-COVID world, I think the idea of digital payments is going to be even far more important. And what you can see in some of the countries, especially in the countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, India, China, the big economies, and South Korea and some of these countries, the domestic payment rails, as well as some of the channel apps, as well as the wallets, are pretty well developed. And what you see is that there are really great mechanisms in which you can actually transfer funds or make payments domestically. I think where you may actually see some friction is maybe in the global payment system. I think we're still stuck with the likes of SWIFT and network, and you know, for P2P kind of, or for merchants, You actually have the PayPal's and just your traditional Visa card players. So there remains an area in which that you could actually see and hopefully develop in the future, some form of global payment system that could be an alternative to these payment rails at this moment. And of course, I think the idea of a blockchain-based kind of payment rails may be something to actually think about globally. However, I think there are a few challenges in terms of this being able to be developed and take off in a major way. I think three particular areas. I think one, is the trust factor. And when we talk about trust, I don't mean blockchain immutability kind of a technical trust. I think it's a case of actually governance and enforcement. For people to be able to trust, the network and be able to actually use it confidently. And secondly, I think there are many different actors in this kind of payment systems. You have the merchants, you have the customers, the consumers, and more importantly, the central banks, which I think there's going to be a big part of this whole entire ecosystem. And for getting central banks for different countries to come together to agree and to think about adopting a blockchain-based kind of payment system is going to be challenging, but it's not insurmountable. They have issues like AML, KYC, CFT kind of concerns in which we need to address. And the third challenge is really about getting, a network of mass consumers and merchants to be able to adopt that. And if you think that we can actually succumb and overcome some of these three challenges, I think a blockchain-based kind of payment systems could be actually quite an interesting proposition to ease the flow of this kind of global payment systems.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. I think you very well laid out the three big challenges which you need to overcome. I love the part which you talk about trust, and there are many different ways to bring trust, but it's one of the possibly the toughest one to bring in. You alluded to having a solution around blockchain, which is actually a good thought to get in. Although blockchain is kind of going through a large degree of controversy in terms of what it helps and what it kind of doesn't. I'll come to that point because I'm sure we will have interest in that particular topic. But let me just turn to Surachai at this point. And Surachai, you said that the first thing which comes to your mind when you hear digital payment is security. We all know that anything to deal with cash is likely to be fraught with challenges. And banks, consumers, everybody would want to make sure that whatever they're dealing with, when they're transferring money or receiving money, it is absolutely secure. But I also know that there is nothing called absolutely secure. So how do you see that balance of people continuing to push the agenda of doing more and yet feeling secure?
Yeah, I think digital payment is good for bank because it's a safe cost for transfer the money or easy to getting the data for the customer. But in another way, I think some people can be violate for the privacy once they want to buy some good or service that they don't need anybody to know what they bought, right? So they want to pay with the cash because they want to protect the privacy. Because if they use whereby the digital payment, the banking can know what is the activity that they did. I think for cyber security, they have some big challenge for the provider for the payment, banking or FSI, because they need to protect the privacy and some of the availability uptime, because in Thailand we have application like the national wallet in the COVID-19. They convince all the Thai people we have the government, because Krung Thai Bank is the largest state-owned enterprise for the government. We have the stakeholder majority with a financial affair. So we pay all the citizen about 5,000 baht for every person that register to my banks, and they need to have the bank account to using this 5,000 baht. Is maybe about 200 Singapore dollar, yeah, for 3 months. So I think this is a good opportunity to learning the digital payment. And I think the main challenge is another thing is digital literacy, because many people is a different background for the IT perspective. So some customer or some citizen doesn't know what is it. The payment can be the victim of the hacker easily for the phishing, for the scan the QR code. Someone doesn't know this is a real QR code or not. So this is the risk that I mentioned. Yeah. Thank you. You close the microphone.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Actually, this is sorry about that. I think this is one area where if you were to see the number of minutes of unproductive time going when people are speaking on mute, that might cause for the highest productivity loss in webinars. Sorry about that. Okay. You made two important points. I'll pick the second one, which you talked about, is the consumer literacy. That's quite very important. And I'll come back to Jimmy, because you're part of a very large bank. And in the past, you could have been okay to just train your bank employees to do the right thing. But now you also have to train large number of people who are the consumers, because many of these problems don't occur because the systems are not good. They happen because the consumer may not be digitally savvy or security literate. How do you solve that problem that the mass payment is happening, Jimmy, and you've got to go and train or make so many people aware about the kind of challenges they need to be aware of?
Well, I think I'd like to actually take this security issues, in two different lenses. I think the first thing when we actually look at some of these application security, these are some things in which we can actually design into the system, and very easily, to enable security on our app for our customer. And this is not something that is insurmountable. I think even with privacy engineering, you can actually protect the privacy of the customer as well. There are many technologies out there that we can deploy and be able to actually secure them. But I think where the soft belly of this whole entire problem is in terms of fraud, with the customers, I think it's in the digital savviness of our customer, the ability for them to be able to use it and not to be scammed, in the process of it. And there are many different ways of overcoming that. I think one is actually our customer education. I think we have always put out notices in our app or in our internet banking, how these things are being done, and actually educate our customers on a consistent basis to enable them, to make them understand that this is, how fraudsters actually come into the ability to actually fraud the customer. I think the other part of it is actually a lot of surveillance that is actually taken at the back end of our systems, in terms of transaction monitoring, the way we look at patterns of transactions, and the ability for us to interject and to be able to intervene at the correct time with a callback and so forth. So there's a lot of mechanism at the back end. However, I think that's not necessarily 100% foolproof. And therefore, you need to actually have another systems of ability to various authorities like the Singapore Police Force, the telcos, and the ability to work with other banks to be able to actually create a more secure environment for our customers. So I think that there are many aspects of it in which that we can actually work on, and collectively, I think all this enable us to actually help our customer to actually transact, in the digital payment space a lot more with a lot more confidence and safety in mind.
Thanks, Jimmy. That gives me a huge confidence because if the banks like you are doing so much, and I know regulators are also pushing the boundary and there's so much happening, I feel a lot more confident that we will overcome this problem because the benefits are so much that we can put in the right kind of mechanism to keep track of bad guys and keep them away. Divert the topic from cybersecurity to coming back to the core of the point which we just talked that time on blockchain. I know it's a very interesting subject, and I'll come to Judy because Judy, you deal with institutional payments all the time, and you work with cross-border and across many jurisdictions. Do you think blockchain has all the right answers to deal with this current challenge, or do you have a different point of view?
I think blockchain is a solution looking for a problem. And maybe this time you may actually find a problem right now. But I think, as I mentioned earlier on, I mean, there are challenges. I think the technology is there. It's not something new. I think MAS, even our regulators have experimented with it. With partners like JP Morgan and other central banks, like Bank of Canada. So I think that there are many availability. I mean, technology-wise, it's not an issue. I mean, it's maturing and it's there and it's been used and it's been prototyped. I think that, as I mentioned earlier on, the basic challenges around some of these issues with confidence in and trust systems, the ability to get central banks into the act, because they do have many concerns around AML, CFT type of concerns. And last but not least, to get everybody on top, to be able to use this confidently, you must have a big network of customers and your merchants all being linked up seamlessly. So those are the key challenges that you probably want to actually look at, because it's the technology solutions is not the sole answer to it. I think there are a lot more things that we need to build around the whole entire payments ecosystem for this to be able to take off. But it's an interesting thought that in the midst of this COVID-19 scenario, there may be a shift in the thinking in terms of some of these challenges, and maybe getting some of these pieces together to actually make it a reality. But it remains to be seen.
Thank you, Jimmy. Do you have a take on this one?
Yeah, just want to add what JP is saying. I don't think DLT is the answer to everything, but we haven't seen a winner yet in this space, right? Besides what is working today, which is SWIFT, we have seen DLT experiments by Ripple, by NN Financial, and others. We have seen the effort by the central banks to do a cross-border instant payment, leveraging domestic instant payment rails. So they are all very interesting trial. If you look at DLT, if it's an open loop DLT, what happens at the end of the day, we will be depending on both parties to be active on the DLT to make it work, which is it's not very easy, because sometimes I'm on, you're off, you are off, you're on, I'm off. To keep everybody engaged at the same time is not an easy thing. Liquidity is also another challenge on DLT. So who will be funding the liquidity? Because we're trying to do cross-border real time. Yeah. Now we have seen success though in the closed loop ecosystem. of any financial, so they have their own DLT system, and including their own business units and the partners, etc. It works very well. So is this going to solve all the questions, issues? No, but obviously there are some use cases, very valid use cases. We have seen P2P payments are probably more active on DLT than B2B payments. It's not to say it's not going to happen. It's just it typically takes longer time for B2B payments to follow the consumer trend. So yeah, that's what we have been seeing so far.
Lovely. I think this particular topic has sparked an interest in the audience, and I have two questions on this subject. I'll pick one, and either of you could respond. The question is that what do you think is the current state of adoption of blockchain and DLT around the world? And they're looking at two dimensions. Is it a lot of POC and no production, or is it some production in certain areas? And what countries are kind of taking lead in that? Any inputs on that will be useful to the audience.
I can start. I mean, you talk about DLT adoption. Again, I'm managing institutional payments. Yeah, it's not very high. Yeah, if you look at the biggest player, was Ripple. They have a lot of participants on the DLT. The most active component segments will be P2P payments. Yeah, the MSPs, PSPs doing remittance transfers, so they are very, very active. If you look at the B2B payment, they're increasing, but not as active as the consumer side. Again, the reason we mentioned before. Now, to boost adoption, it takes scale. It takes the whole entire ecosystem to be on the DLT and to be active. And someone needs to provide liquidity. It doesn't matter if it's a closed loop or open loop, someone needs to be providing liquidity. And as the scale increase, the liquidity needed is a huge amount. So that challenge needs to be solved, adoption to the critical mass.
So I think what you see right now is a lot of POCs, right? Not so much of availability of such a solution. I think Judy is absolutely right. I think, as I say, there are challenges, but I think that if somebody can, or an organization can come out to resolve some of these issues and being able to work with the central banks, I think that it's not insurmountable, but it's a lot of work to be done.
Thanks, Jimmy and Judy. I think that's very useful for people to understand, because people like you know a lot more about this. I'm conscious of time. I've got 2 minutes to go, and I've got a flurry of questions to pick. So I'll try and be quick and pick one question, Surachai, at you. It is said that when people are working in virtual world, they are less stress conscious. And people who, there's also another study which I am reminded of, that people who play rash driving video games are also bad drivers. So do you think that this whole virtual world, the whole digital payment is likely to make us more dishonest, more prone to fraud, or something? You have a take on it? Are we changing as a way to do business to become less secure over time?
Okay, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, the question is that does digital payment increase the risk of fraud because people believe that they can't be caught?
I think that it makes fraud so much easier because of this efficiency and the fast movement of funds. I mean, if you were to be scammed within seconds and minutes, your fund would have been transferred out of the banking account very, very quickly. So I'm not sure if it actually, it could actually increase the fraud level. And I think over time we are also seeing higher increase in number of attempts. But I think more importantly is that the speed at which it's actually happening and how fast it can happen. I think to me that's the key issue and key challenge.
And that's well said. I know I'm end of time, but I have to take this question because this is like a landmark question which came from the audience, and any one of you can pick that. How can digital payment transform developing world? So how can the developing world take advantage of digital payments? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, to me, digital payments is a huge enabler for developing world. Yeah, they have, we have bypassed the cards and ACH. A lot of the traditional payment rails that took many years for the developed world to evolve, and then they eventually reached digital payments. Now we can just quantum leap, reach the digital payments immediately. I mean, it gives people the power of, if you think about what does it do, digital payment do, it enables the immediate transfer of ownership of money. So what does it enable? It can enable the immediate transfer of ownership of the goods or services. So everything could be transacted in real time, be the goods or services. That's a huge win. It definitely is a big enabler to high growth of economy for the country and for the business, for the individuals. I think that's one of the big enablers.
As I mentioned earlier on, I think it's a hygiene factor for economic growth. I think the flows of funds, the exchange of value, those are the ones in which will actually lubricate the whole entire economy. And therefore, I mean, digital payments allows you to actually do it seamlessly, and therefore will be, primary driver of your economic growth over time. If you do have good payment systems that has been developed domestically.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm almost 120 seconds over time, and the clock is flashing absolute red. I'm very happy for ET to set this all together because they brought in some of these best people on this subject, and I'm very thankful. I'm also very happy with the kind of audience question we've seen, but I'm sad that we only had 30 minutes. I think we would have gone for 3 hours with this kind of experts. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pass on some of the things which I saw as the potential pointers and some questions which we couldn't take in the interest of time for the next set of panelists to pick up. So there could be a very good interest. I'm seeing some questions about fintech, how they're going to transform digital payment and the role of regulator, and some of those aspects. I'm sure you will pass on some of those interesting topics which the audience is interested on. But I would like to thank you, thank ET, and thank all my panelists and the wonderful audience. Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akhilesh. Thank you, Jimmy, Judy, and Surachai, for your thoughts and insights. It was a very enlightening discussion. Thank you very much.